One of the consequences of this war has been a lot of very high passions on both sides, a lot of angry disagreements. You and your company have been at the centre of a very high profile one at the moment with Candace Owens, who's now left Daily Wire. Was she fired or did she leave of her own volition?
I'm not going to speak to this topic, Piers.
At all?
At all.
You can't give me any insight into why she departed?
No hints, no nothing. I'm not going to speak to this.
Can I ask why?
I mean, you can ask.
No, I'm not. Can I ask why you don't want to say anything?
Again, you can ask.
I'm only curious because I know what a staunch defender of free speech you are, and it would surprise me if it had been someone's opinions that would make you want to part company with them, however contentious.
I mean, suffice it to say, the only thing I will say is what I've said all along with regard to Candace or with regard to any of our other hosts. I am not in hiring and firing position with the Daily Wire. I'm a co-founder of the Daily Wire. I'm a co-owner of the Daily Wire. I'm not actually in management. Jeremy Boring and Caleb Robinson are in management positions with regard to Candace or anyone else. And as far as the free speech situation, what I will say is that no company has the obligation to literally pay anyone. The Daily Wire is a publisher. It is not a platform. I've never called for Candace or anyone else for that matter to be banned from YouTube, to be banned from X, to be banned from any platform. That's a different story, obviously, when it comes to any publisher. Any publisher gets to make decisions about what it wishes to purvey and not.
I mean, I'm just not going to labour this, but one more point I would make is it's been reported extensively that the reason for her departure was because her comments have been perceived by people at the Daily Wire as anti-Semitic.
Again, I'm not going to comment on this, Piers.
Okay,
so that was interesting. But before we explain why Ben Shapiro is not even giving an ounce of any reason to Piers Morgan, it's pretty clear why, NDA and all that stuff. But watch this very, very interesting video. Pretty much the same kind of question, and watch how Candace Owens answers Piers Morgan, and then we'll explain the real reasoning behind this whole, back and forth, why, what, where. We'll get into all that after this video.
There's a much more interesting story, I think, involving you, which has played out in the last few months, which everybody knows about. So let's just talk about that. Why did you leave the Daily Wire?
Well, unfortunately, I can't talk about the specific reasons that I left the Daily Wire, but what I can do is respond to whatever reasons were given to the public. And obviously, no sooner did we agree to leave than Andrew Klavan of the Daily Wire did an entire episode stating that the reasons that I was leaving was because I was anti-Semitic and I was engaging in a type of anti-Semitism that was hard to pin down. And that is why in my first episode of launching my independent podcast, I hit back pretty hard at him because, I think it's pretty despicable, first and foremost, as a colleague who I had a great relationship with, to have engaged in that, knowing that I was not at liberty to say anything. I thought it was a very underhanded, disgusting tactic, and I responded in force.
I want to play you what Ben Shapiro told me when I asked him about this on Uncensored. One of the consequences of this war has been a lot of very high passions on both sides, a lot of angry disagreements. You and your company have been at the centre of a very high profile one at the moment with Candace Owens, who's now left Daily Wire. Was she fired or did she leave of her own volition?
I'm not going to speak to this topic, Piers.
At all?
At all. The only thing I will say is what I've said all along with regard to Candace or with regard to any of our other hosts. I am not in hiring and firing position with the Daily Wire. I'm a co-founder of the Daily Wire. I'm a co-owner of the Daily Wire. I'm not actually in management. And as far as the free speech situation, what I will say is that no company has the obligation to literally pay anyone. The Daily Wire is a publisher. It is not a platform.
Do you agree with that, Candace?
Agree with which part?
Well, okay, any of it.
Well, I think that it's interesting, and I'd love to sit down with and debate Ben Shapiro on a number of topics, particularly cancel culture, because I know that he's made some comments in the past that he believes that publishers, platforms should allow people to have different ideas. And so those particular comments to me sound in contrast to what he has said in the past. but I can't speak on behalf of him, obviously. I personally believe that media companies are healthier when you allow people to have different opinions and allow people to debate those opinions. Personally, I love to see a debate between two people. And so I can only tell you what my perspective is and can't really speak for him.
I mean, he made the point at the end there that any company, any private company, when it comes to free speech, is not compelled to pay people to work for them. I mean, would you accept that as a principle?
Well, what I would say again is that it just kind of runs into what is wrong. I guess the question you could ask is, what is wrong if CNN fires somebody for having a different opinion? What then is wrong if Fox News fires somebody for having a different opinion? Your answer would have to be that it's not wrong and that companies are at will to curate whatever belief system that they want and to not allow free speech. So, you know.
Out of interest, is it true that you signed an NDA and that's why you can't really talk about this in detail?
I cannot speak in detail about any of that stuff.
You can't even confirm whether you've had an NDA?
I am not free to speak about any topic pertaining to contracts signed or not signed. And so...
You see, this is where it gets interesting for me, because you referenced Andrew Klavan from the Daily Wire. I want to play a part of what he said, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
The Daily Wire parted ways with Candace Owens, and part of it was things that she was saying that we felt were strongly anti-Semitic. And she was doing it in such a way that it was kind of hard to pin down, so I was trying to show where these things happen.
So I'm bemused, because I've been involved in a lot of contracts in my time. I've been an employer, I've been an employee, and so on. I don't understand why somebody from the Daily Wire can be so explicit about the reasons you left, and yet you are not able to be as explicit to defend yourself or to counter what they're saying.
Amen, Piers. Amen. I think that is probably a question that was on a lot of people's minds. And, you know, what can I say other than what was it that Kanye was saying about contracts? And, you know, I think it is, even if you believe that it is valid for that to happen, I think it is immoral to allow someone to attack someone and to not allow them to defend their name. And so for me, Andrew actually rose to the level of defamation when he started claiming that I had actually said things that I had never said. I mean, he flagrantly lies, and I showed that on my platform when he pretended that I did an episode suggesting that Adolf Hitler burning books was a good thing. I wasn't even speaking about Adolf Hitler. It's a nonsense to think that I would do that on my platform. And it's a trick also. It's meant to make people feel emotional and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she's supporting Adolf Hitler. And I thought it was nasty business. I thought it was extremely nasty business. And, you know, for me, Piers, it's important for me to state, my name means a lot to me. You know, my grandfather grew up on a sharecropping farm, one of 12 children, you know, in the segregated South, Robert Owens Sr. And for him to have worked the way that he worked and to have instilled the Christian values in me that he instilled in me growing up, the idea that I would allow someone to so flagrantly throw dirt on his name, it was never going to fly.
Did you ever say or do anything which to a Jewish ear could be construed as anti-Semitic?
Well, let's be clear about all of these topics, whether we're talking about racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, everything can be construed to an ear when you're talking about a subjective ear that I believe that this is racist. I mean, I could say, hey, Piers, you even asking me questions, and to me, it feels racist, right? A feeling and a fact are two different things. So what someone construes something is meaningless. Factually speaking, I have never said anything that is anti-Semitic, and had I have said something that was anti-Semitic, Andrew Klavan would have simply showed the clip.
Right, a lot of attention's been focused on you constantly referencing Christ is King.
Okay, so we covered a lot there. First of all, the Andrew Klavan thing, irrelevant. This is between Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. But before we talk about this topic, we want to ask the viewers, what do you guys think? Comment in the comment section. Leave a comment. Tell us, why are Ben Shapiro and both Candace Owens not commenting on this? We saw both now with Piers Morgan, right? They both refused to answer. You saw Candace Owens would even answer whether or not she signed an NDA. Ben Shapiro shut down Piers Morgan. He wouldn't give him an inch. He said, you can ask me whatever you want, but I'm not going to answer. Ben Shapiro, you can find on other podcasts he went on. They ask him the same thing over and over. And this is all speculation. So comment below. Tell us what you think. Why? What is the reason? I mean, we know why Ben Shapiro fired Candace Owens from the Daily Wire, but why are they refusing to talk about it? Now, just to get into a few quick topics, they keep bringing up, Candace Owens was fired. Can she talk about it? The other guy, Andrew Klavan, he's irrelevant. This is between Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens. You saw the fact that Klavan, the next day, according to Candace Owens, I don't know if it was the next day exactly, but very quickly put out an entire hour discussion about what Candace did wrong, why she was anti-Semitic, all this stuff about, not just anti-Israel, but anti-Semitic, okay? Candace Owens then responded on her own show for over an hour as well against Klavan, but that's all a sideshow. That's a distraction. What that tells us is that the obvious NDA that was signed between the two parties, Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro, did not include anybody else. And you'll notice Candace Owens is more than happy to talk about her departure from the Daily Wire, but she cannot, and you saw just now, will not even mention the idea of an NDA connected to Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro also will not mention anything related to the NDA. We've never seen such an example, such an instance, such a high-profile firing of someone who became quite well-known in Candace Owens on the internet as a personality, as a commentator. Turns out she had very strong opinions. She was obviously fired for her not just anti-Israel rhetoric, but ultimately the anti-Semitic stuff. There's plenty of it on YouTube you can find. We don't have enough time to list all the examples, but it's kind of remarkable. And it got to the point. Now, the only interesting part, I would say, we can't just say, one side is 100% right, one side is 100% wrong. Candace Owens does have a point when she says the notion of free speech, right? She should be able to have her opinion, and Ben Shapiro supports free speech. And therefore, maybe she didn't deserve to be fired. Now, in a silo, she's not wrong. However, the stance, the kind of modus operandi of the Daily Wire is to be not just free speech, but also pro-freedom, pro-democracy, pro-Israel, not racist. And Candace Owens said some things. Again, there's too many things to list. Feel free to look on YouTube or anywhere. Candace Owens said a lot of things which were both against Israel. She was, as Dave Rubin, another right-wing podcaster in this sphere, Dave Rubin is friends with both Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. He pointed out how Candace Owens was conveniently extremely quiet about the October 7th tragedy with Israel. And basically, to summarize, Candace Owens was, not exactly, keeping the company line with the Daily Wire in terms of her stance on Israel. And they were still letting her they were still letting her work there, right? It was only as the year went on, she just kept getting more and more fiery with her rhetoric and the anti-Semitic stuff. I mean, it was bad enough 2 years ago when she defended Kanye West when he went off against the Jews, right? Ben Shapiro even defended her to a degree. It just went off the rails. They fired her, and Ben Shapiro was right. The Daily Wire, right, they believe in free speech, but they also don't have to pay somebody salary if that person is saying things that are contrary to the company's motto and beliefs. And Candace Owens just went off too far off the rails. They fired her. There was an NDA signed because there was a lot of probably bad blood that could have come out, a lot of nasty defamation lawsuits, this and that. I think they figured out a way of just, all right, you know what? They're both kind of celebrities. Ben Shapiro is obviously much bigger than Candace Owens. Ben Shapiro is the number one right-wing podcast in America. Candace Owens has a popular YouTube channel. She's up there. but she is not as kind of mainstream popular as Ben Shapiro. They figured out a way to kind of mutually sign this NDA. Now, again, if you have different analysis or thought, please comment below. We want to hear what you think. But they signed an NDA mutually. They agreed not only to not defame each other, they agreed not to even mention each other. And that's the fascinating thing here, because we just saw right now with Piers Morgan, he tried to talk to both of them, and they both were mum. Now, Candace Owens had no problem going off on Ben Shapiro's coworker, and that's totally fine, because clearly the NDA was between Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. There have been a lot of people who have tried to get them to debate, to get in the ring together, but that's not going to happen because of this NDA. There's no reason to. Ben Shapiro is bigger than her. No reason for both of them to do that, or for him to do that. Comment below what you think happened. We'd love to hear. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and tune in next week for another reaction video.